My name is Flora, and at 27 years old, I have established myself as an architect, working diligently at a well-regarded local firm. On my days off, I unwind by delving into the pages of various books. This peaceful life is in stark contrast to my turbulent childhood, which was filled with struggles, loneliness, and a lack of warmth from my parents. The only source of comfort in those dark times was my Aunt Molina, who, despite being just 13 years older than me, was my biggest supporter. Today, I want to share the cherished memories I have of her and the kindness she showed me when I needed it most. Growing up, I always felt the distance between me and my parents. They were strict and demanding, setting impossibly high expectations. I remember vividly when I was in first grade, bringing home a test where I had lost a few points. Instead of encouragement, I was met with harsh criticism. "It's embarrassing not to score perfectly at this level," they said. My only response was a quiet, "I'm sorry." My mother, visibly disappointed, muttered under her breath, "Why did such a child come from us?" Their cold words sank deep into my heart, making me feel like a failure. I was born into a family of medical professionals in a wealthy neighborhood of a provincial city. My father was a doctor, my mother a nurse, and from the very beginning, they expected me to follow in their footsteps. They enrolled me in private schools and cram classes, investing in my education with the hope that I would become a doctor. But despite their hopes, I was only an average student. No matter how hard I studied, I couldn't meet their expectations. I spent hours alone with my textbooks, hoping to gain their approval, but they only saw me as weak and lacking potential. My younger sister Penny, just a year younger than me, was different. She was naturally gifted, excelling effortlessly in school. While I struggled to keep up, she was always a step ahead. My parents showered her with attention, taking her to museums and theaters, buying her books, and supporting her education in every way. Meanwhile, I was left behind, forgotten and unimportant in their eyes. "There's no point wasting resources on you," they would say when I asked to join them. The loneliness of being left behind on holidays, listening to the laughter of happy families outside, made me feel even more unwanted. However, a turning point came when my parents planned a long trip to visit a distant museum with Penny. They couldn't leave me alone for 3 days. So, for the first time, they had no choice but to leave me with Molina. That was when I began to see the possibility of a different kind of love, a love that was warm and accepting. One chilly morning, my father drove me to a small apartment in a neighboring town. He was visibly annoyed as he rang the doorbell. The woman who answered was Molina, his much younger sister. Her messy blonde hair and casual gray sweatshirt gave her a carefree appearance. My father handed over my bag, exchanged a few cold words with Molina, and left without looking back at me. I stood there, unsure of what to expect. "Come in," Molina said gently, ushering me inside. I had rarely spoken to her before. My father had always warned me to stay away from her, calling her irresponsible and unworthy. He often criticized her for not finishing school and struggling to make a living. As I sat awkwardly in her small living room, a delicious smell filled the air. Molina soon brought out a tray with clam chowder and warm scones. "Didn't have breakfast, did you?" she asked kindly. I hesitated before taking a sip of the soup, and instantly, I was comforted by its rich taste. "Delicious, right? Clam chowder is the best for breakfast," she said with a smile. Over the next 5 days, Molina took care of me with a warmth I had never known. She cooked hearty meals like stews and risottos, always offering seconds with a smile. She even took me to the zoo, pointing at the animals with excitement. "Look at that gorilla, isn't it cool?" she laughed. For the first time, I felt truly cared for. After that trip, whenever my parents went on vacations without me, they left me with Molina. Each time, she welcomed me with open arms, and gradually, I started to trust her. She would often say, "I always wanted a little sister like you," and those words made me feel special. Yet, despite the love Molina showed me, my parents continued to criticize her. My father often used her as an example of failure. "If you don't study hard, you'll end up like her," he would say. But the more time I spent with Molina, the more I realized how wrong they were about her. She was not a failure. She was kind, hardworking, and full of love. She made me feel valued in a way my parents never did. As the years passed, my parents' neglect became more obvious. By 3rd grade, I was given only the bare essentials, just enough food and clothing to avoid suspicion from teachers. At home, I was often told to leave so they wouldn't be bothered by my presence. I spent most of my time in parks and libraries, finding comfort in books and the quiet places where no one could tell me I wasn't good enough. The only bright spot was Molina, who continued to look after me in her own way. One day, as we sat in her small apartment, Molina gently brushed my hair and asked, "Flora, would you like to live with me?" Her voice was soft, her touch comforting. "If you feel life at home is hard, think of me as your parent." I was stunned. Could I really live with her, escape the cold, unloving house I had always known? "We'll eat together every day, sleep side by side, and go to the zoo sometimes," she added with a hopeful smile. It sounded like a dream. For a moment, I hesitated. Molina was still single and working hard to make ends meet. Would I be a burden? Would my parents allow it? Seeing my hesitation, Molina chuckled. "But you might not want a silly parent like me, huh?" "That's not true," I blurted out. The thought of living with Molina filled me with hope. I wanted to be part of her world, to have the warmth and love she offered. I was afraid of how my parents would react, but deep inside, I knew this was what I wanted. Molina smiled and gave me a reassuring thumbs up. "It's okay," she said. That moment was irreplaceable. For the first time, I felt like I had a choice, a chance to be happy, a chance to be loved, and in that instant, I made my decision. I wanted to be with Molina. Penny stood her ground, her eyes blazing with determination as she faced our father. His voice was stern, leaving no room for negotiation. "If you're going to take a gap year, withdraw from university immediately and enroll in a preparatory school. That is my final decision," he declared firmly, his gaze unwavering. Penny, however, did not flinch. "I absolutely refuse," she stated with equal firmness. She was not about to be pushed into something she had no passion for, no matter how much pressure our parents exerted. Our mother, hoping to take a gentler approach, sighed and spoke softly. "Penny, pursuing something like nutrition or cooking, something anyone can do, is beneath your potential. Everyone expects you to become a doctor. It's the most respectable profession." Penny narrowed her eyes and folded her arms. "If anyone can cook, then tell me, Mom, can you?" she challenged. "Do you know how to make a perfect vinaigrette, or how to fry popcorn shrimp without burning them?" Our mother hesitated, caught off guard. Cooking had never been her forte. She relied on takeout meals and prepackaged food from the store. She faltered, unable to answer. Penny shook her head, her voice tinged with disappointment. "It's ironic, isn't it, relying on others to cook for you, yet looking down on chefs? If you force me to become a doctor against my will, wouldn't it be better to let someone who actually wants to be one take my place? That way, at least, they would be genuinely helping others." My father's patience snapped. "That's just an excuse," he barked. Penny took a deep breath, then shifted the conversation. "Mom, Dad, be honest with yourselves. You know that my sister is far more talented than I am, right?" Her words hit like a sudden clap of thunder, making our parents' faces twist in disbelief. "That's not true," our mother argued. "Really? Then tell me, do you even know which university my sister attends?" Penny pressed, watching their reactions closely. For a moment, silence filled the room. Our parents exchanged uneasy glances, searching their minds for an answer. Well. They stammered but could not produce a response. Their ignorance was undeniable. Penny sighed. "You don't know, and you definitely don't know how prestigious the architecture department is at her university. She got in because she's an excellent student. You never noticed because you were too focused on me." Her words carried a weight that was impossible to ignore. Feeling emboldened, I decided to speak up. "Mom, Dad, you wouldn't know how well I did in school because you never once attended a parent-teacher conference for me." My voice was steady, but there was a sharp edge to it. Our parents had no comeback. They stood frozen, their expressions unreadable. The truth was plain before them. The success they so proudly attributed to their parenting had nothing to do with them. It was thanks to Molina, my mentor and biggest supporter. Penny smiled, the fight draining from her face. "Don't worry about me. I've already taken care of everything. My tuition is handled. I've found a place to stay, and I've moved my things out. You didn't even notice, did you?" The color drained from our parents' faces. First, they had been angry. Now, they were simply stunned. Molina, who had been silent for most of the exchange, finally spoke. "You both only ever cared about grades, but it's such a shame you never understood what incredible daughters you have." Our parents swallowed hard, unable to reply. Molina's words stung more than anything Penny or I had said. After all, she was the one they had dismissed for years, yet she was the one who truly saw us. In the end, Penny packed her things with the help of a friend and left. She moved to another state, 4 hours away, and just like that, she was gone. Years passed, but our parents never changed. By the time I was in my second year of university, their old habits had returned. One day, they suddenly called me, insisting that we meet. I had a feeling I wouldn't like what they had to say, but I agreed anyway. We met at their favorite restaurant. I brought Molina along, knowing her presence would make them uncomfortable. Sure enough, they frowned the moment they saw her. Once we sat down, they pulled out several pamphlets and spread them across the table. All of them were from medical schools. "What is this?" I asked, already dreading their answer. "We're giving you a second chance to apply to medical school. This is an opportunity for you to redeem yourself and surpass Penny, who has always overshadowed you," my father explained, as if offering me a golden ticket. I blinked, then suddenly burst into laughter. It was just too ridiculous. "What's so funny?" my mother asked, frowning. I wiped a tear from my eye. "It's just amusing to see Dad so proud of this ridiculous plan. You really think I want this? I have my own life now." Realizing I had been mocking them, their expressions darkened. "Why can't you and Penny understand the nobility of being a doctor? Is this Molina's influence again?" my father accused, turning his anger toward her. Molina, completely unfazed, smiled. "Brother, you're so stubborn. What did you just say? Flora and Penny aren't denying the importance of doctors. They just have different dreams: architecture, nutrition, and cooking. But to you, any job that isn't prestigious is worthless." As the argument escalated, a voice suddenly cut in. "Even if those jobs are ones anyone can do, that's fine." We all turned to see 3 tall, well-dressed men standing nearby. "Who are you?" my father asked, looking puzzled. One of them stepped forward. "Perfect timing. You just insulted an architect and his son." Molina smiled and gently placed a hand on the young man beside her. "This is my husband, Hudson. It's an honor to meet you, brother-in-law." My father's eyes widened in shock. Molina and Hudson had been together for years, and when I turned 22, they had finally married. Through him, I had gained a deeper appreciation for architecture. Hudson's father stepped forward, smiling warmly. "Luke, I run an architecture firm in this area. Flora has expressed interest in my work. I'd like to take her under my wing and prepare her for a future in the field." "How dare you make such decisions for her?" my parents exploded. Hudson met their gaze calmly. "The truth is, you've never taken an interest in Flora's future. Now that Penny is gone, you're trying to manipulate her. That's disgraceful." A murmur spread through the restaurant. Then, a chef walked up and placed a dish in front of my father. "Luke, since you look down on us ordinary people, you won't need to eat our food anymore. This is the last meal we will serve you." My father paled as shame washed over him. For the first time, he was forced to reckon with the consequences of his arrogance, and for the first time, I truly felt free.